and here we are on Employee to Boss. I have leader Mike Wells with us today. You know, Mike, I see that the biggest hurdle for people to get over is to start a business, is the confidence to start the business. You know, and Ritz-Carlton has a great motto. It's ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And I kind of think about business, and really for us to go from employee to boss, it takes a leader to connect with other leaders. So a leader, you know, the leader that's inside you as an employee to come out, raise up, and stand next to another leader. You know, but like society, I think hinders us to get that confidence, right? So we go to school for 20 years or, you know, and we're basically put down. We have somebody over us telling us what to think it, how to do it. We have our parents that were, you know, listening to us, guiding us through what's right and what's wrong. We have work, you know, we're an employee and our boss is telling us what we should do, what we shouldn't do. Even sports now are saying that, you know, everybody's equal. There's no champion. There's nobody rises to the top or anything like that. And so society in these four areas, which dominates the first 20, 25 years of our life, tell us, don't be a leader, don't have confidence. Submit, shut up, do our job, do our work, and we aren't coming, we're not rising to the top as leaders as we should be. Right. To be bosses. You know, I think actually confidence is a bigger hindrance for an employee to become a boss than money. You know, I had this job one time, it was $365,000. I got the job, and then I had that oh crap moment. You know, it's like, oh crap, I don't have the money. So I just went, because I had the confidence, because I had the job. I just went to people, and I just kept on knocking on doors, and I got through about 8 people. I went to banks and personal people, and I went to about 8 people, and I got a $100,000 loan. And that's why I say money didn't give me the confidence to get that job. Confidence that I could do the job, that I was a leader, that I was equal in these other people's eyes, gave me the confidence to get the job, sign the contract, and then find the money later. Mm-hmm. What's your take on society and where we're at today, and how do we change?
I mean, I agree with everything you say in that society is not breeding confidence in people. Okay, we would rather people just do what they're told, shut up, and the bosses want to be the bosses and they want employees to be employees. Very rarely do you find a boss who wants to build his employees into leaders and release them to lead because he's secure having other people work for him or her, okay? And so one of the things that I look at with the story that you just told about your personal experience and going and getting that loan is a lot of people try to have confidence without risk. And I don't believe you can. Okay? Confidence comes from overcoming risk and going through risk, just like obstacles, you know, make you stronger. You know, if God moved all the obstacles out of our life, we would never have any muscles built. We would never have any faith built. We would never have anything like that. Same in, you know, if you know that what your product is excellent. Okay? So you're a tile installer, okay? If you know you put tile in excellently, you keep your job site clean, you have a good relationship with the people who own your contracts, and you have a good rapport with your workers, and you run an excellent business, okay? That breeds confidence to a certain level. But to step out and continue to take risks to get more jobs is a daily thing you have to do. And so risk is inherent in building confidence in a leader. But what paralyzes people is taking risk because they begin to question, do I have everything it takes? Do I have this money? Do I have this? Do I have that? Do I have this? And before they know it, I call it the paralysis of analysis, is that they've analyzed so much that it hinders them from stepping out and taking a simple risk, such as going and asking for a loan. How many people would have stopped at person number 1 when they got told no? Maybe they would have went to person number 2. You know, but what was it in you that went to 8 until you got what you wanted?
I felt like I had to get the money because I had the contract, like, you know. And then I'm sitting there thinking, from a business standpoint, who wouldn't want to give me a loan? Like, I'm giving them 10% on their money for 6 months to basically do nothing. So I'm like, if I had $1 million sitting in the bank, you know, and somebody comes to me and says, hey, do nothing, 6 months, I'll give you 10 grand. Seems like a pretty good deal, you know. So I looked at it from that standpoint of am I investable? Is this a legitimate job? Does this give the person a return? I wasn't just blindly blowing smoke up somebody and just saying, hey, oh yeah, I'm going to make you lots of money, and not have a track record or pattern or, understand what the realm that I was going into. So I think the more understanding you have about a situation helps promote the gathering of money. I actually kind of dwindled it down just to 4 different things. It was, if the more knowledgeable you are, so you were talking about analysis paralysis, the more knowledgeable you are about your industry, the more responsibility you take. And then also the problems you're solving, and then be great. It's kind of those 4 things that I feel take and put the confidence in you.
Correct.
From the first standpoint, be knowledgeable. Do you have the skill to be able to perform the job?
Okay, so from an employee point of view, can you humble yourself to jump in the back pocket of your boss and say, teach me? Teach me the big picture. Teach me the things that you look at. When I started construction in college, I had no knowledge of construction at all prior to it. And my boss said, if you'll learn, I'll teach you what you need to know. He taught me, our specific group, we didn't sub things out. We did everything ourselves. So from setting forms and digging footings to putting up sheetrock to running electrical to I made the cement I was a brick hottie, whatever they call them. I forgot what the technical name was. But I was the grunt that did the cement, okay? But I mean, from the whole thing, he was just like, here, I need you to see, here's why we need this. I need you to think ahead. What are you going to need for this job? And he began to pour that into me. And he was a great leader because he built his workers. But as an employee, I had to make the decision to humble myself and not think I knew everything and to sit there and say, why did you do this? Why didn't you do this is just as valid of a question because it would show you the things that you didn't know that he was preventing from happening, okay? And then when you get in a situation where something goes awry, you're right there and you have that relationship and rapport where you can learn from it. So in order to be knowledgeable, an employee's got to shut his mouth and just learn. He's got to put his pride down and say, listen, I'm willing to do some of the grunt work in order to be taught. But then once you get those skills and once you get that knowledge, then you can be excellent in your trade because now you know how to think ahead. Now you know what you need, and you can train your people to do that.
Which helps you be able to problem solve. That was my thing is my uncle told me there's 2 types of people, book smart people, me, get my dumb butt in the truck and started flooring, And I didn't think it was a bad thing because my uncle lived a mile away from the beach, in Fort Lauderdale, he had $1 million house. His partner had a 40-foot Bertram behind his house, lived less than a mile down the beach. And so they taught me a skill, but the next step of being a boss, they did not teach me. And I took that skill and I moved and I went to another state and I learned more from another person I worked for, but nobody ever taught me how to be a boss. Nobody said, here's the business sense behind that skill that you have. And I find that a lot of people are knowledgeable about the skill, the understanding, management, or they know how to do flooring or whatever. They just don't know the part of business. And so that lack of analysis paralysis or not understanding, then the knowledge of it keeps them from stepping out and starting their own company.
I would agree 100% in that most people don't take the time, to learn everything from, think of what, you got to be responsible for accounting, okay? Yeah. You got to be responsible for paying stinking taxes, okay? Most people don't take the time to learn the administrative. They just want to actually do the job itself. And that's, to me, what separates a leader from an employee. Some employees can be leaders, but a leader is willing to learn the other things outside of just doing the job in order to make the culture of that job successful. And that culture is the attitude you bring in. That culture is the skills and the rapport you have talking to, an OSHA representative or something like that, is all the people skills that you have to have. And so that culture comes into it, and that group of talents that you have more than just installing tile. Some people call that grunt work, just doing the actual job. But a leader has to be knowledgeable in the other areas that affect that job. And that's where a boss carries a lot of weight an employee doesn't. Until an employee takes the time to learn what a boss carries, they can never step up and to be a boss.
Well, then, I feel like we need to always be learners. So, to say be knowledgeable, there's also a degree of, you can read as many books as you possibly can handle a night or day or week or month or year or 5 years, 10 years. But to be knowledgeable also takes the experience that you're going to have to endure to, this worked, this didn't work. So it's not just book smart. It's not just podcast smart. It's not just, Mike said this on a podcast, I'm going to go start a business. It's Mike said this. Now, how does this apply to me to go start a business? And then what is it going to look like? What are going to be my experiences? Because you're going to hit many different experiences. That thing I just said about the $360,000, that was one experience of borrowing money. I've had to do that multiple times and have different conversations about different jobs. Sometimes it's $10,000. Sometimes it's $100,000 or, and every person that I talk to, every job is different. So just to think that you're knowledgeable to obtain all the experiences that are going to happen in the future, you're wrong. So you have to kind of keep a mindset of being flexible, learnable, teachable. You said humble. I think that's something that needs to be applied your whole business career, your whole life, in that aspect.
Your second point was to be responsible. Can you admit you're wrong? Okay, hey, I messed up. Let me go fix this job. That's being responsible, okay? Or even as an employee, hey, I didn't get this done on time, okay? Be responsible and own it, because then a boss can trust you that, listen, yeah, he may have messed up, and I got to create an environment where my employees can have a little bit of failure because they learn from failure. Failure is not final. Failure is a teaching opportunity of why you need to do it a certain way or do it better or do it faster.
Act different.
Think different. Yeah. And so you're coaching them the entire time. And so in that, part of that being responsible is, wisdom is applying knowledge in a situation in order to get a result. Okay. Sometimes you're going to apply that knowledge and you're going to get it wrong.
That's good. Say that again.
Okay, wisdom is applying knowledge in a certain situation to get a result. Okay, so you think, all right, I've got this knowledge, here's how I need to handle it. Okay, I got a crack in this floor, I got to put crack suppressant down, and I got to be able to do this, so I need to be able to work all this stuff. Okay, you handled that one right. But then when they hit a situation, you allude to problem solving as one of the next issues here. But when you go into that, all you're doing is taking knowledge and you're applying it in that situation, hoping to get the result that you want to get. Okay.
Well, and know that you're going to come into a floor next time and next time and next time.
And it might be completely different. Okay. And so in these things is the more you have those experiences, the more practical knowledge you get, not just intellectual knowledge, which is what books and podcasts and that sort of stuff, but the practical experiential knowledge. But even that in wisdom, you got to learn, okay, hey, they have a new product out. Okay, they have this to be able to cover where you don't have to put crack suppressant down. You can just pour something on it and it's going to expand and under that and you're going to be fine. Okay, so learning and being teachable. One of the first things I look at for any employee is, are they teachable? If they're not teachable, I won't even hire them. Because, if they think they know everything, then I don't need them. They should be doing it themselves.
Well, and it puts the responsibility back on you. If there's going to be absent-minded not to be teachable and take on the responsibilities that you need, then that responsibility comes back on you. And that's what we're talking about, being not only responsible for you, what you know, what you do, how you do it, responsible for your taxes, responsible for your workman's comp, your insurances, but also being responsible for the people under you. Are you hiring employees and other people that aren't helping you? And then that responsibility comes back on you. When you own responsibility, it's one of the hardest places to be, but it's one of the best places to be.
It is, and that's why very few people do it. But that's what sets leaders apart from employees, is who's willing to carry responsibility and own it, okay? Because you ask an employee, did you do this wrong? Do they point a finger first, or do they look at you and say, yes, sir, I did it wrong, and I need to fix it? That's an employee with some character and who's willing to be taught versus somebody that just wants to shift the blame and not have to carry the responsibility. Okay, I just met a man the other day that I was talking to who has been in a pretty serious situation. He had hired his daughter to work and to do the finances, and she didn't pay his taxes for 5 years.
Oh, good.
And so the IRS came calling, and he had, like $120,000 in back taxes that he had to pay, plus all the penalties. Okay. Well, any leader knows you've got to inspect what you expect of people. But that goes back to teaching. Did he teach his daughter to pay taxes? Or did he just assume she knew? Okay. Did he ever go back? Why did it wait 5 years to go check to see if he did taxes? He should have got it the first year when he got his 1099. I mean, I'm not judging the man. I'm just saying, are you having and holding accountable? So part of teaching is holding accountable, and then that as you do that and you teach, you hold accountable, you give opportunity for failure, you're going to see if the person's a leader or if they're just, listen, they're never going to progress past this point. They're going to be an installer. They're not meant to be a leader.
Well, and I think you have to also check ourselves, are we doing this? Like, what are we doing as leaders to be responsible? Nobody's going to come to us when we own our business like this guy and say, hey, did you remember to follow this point? Did you remember to follow this law? Did you remember to apply this? Did you remember to put wisdom, here? And so as a leader, we can't wait for somebody to tell us. We have to be forecasting and forward thinking enough to say, I will apply that to this situation. I will apply that to my business. I will make sure that others around me are applying this also. And so, from a management standpoint, that's where responsibility falls is if you're going to manage, you accept that responsibility, but you have to check yourself. That's
Correct.
Part of the responsibility.
Absolutely. You mentioned solving problems as your third point here. To me, personally, nothing is more exciting than problems. I hate nothing more than solving problems, but nothing is more exciting.
Right.
Okay? Because if you hold up your fist and you look at it, that's one vantage. But you see a fist. This person over here sees a fist. This person's a fist. That's a fist. You can have so many different vantages from it. Well, that's what problem solving is you can't just look at it the way you always see it. You have to learn to look from a different vantage to see, what if I did this? What if I did that? What if I did this? So an airplane, okay? The greatest hindrance to an airplane is the atmosphere, okay? Because of the friction of the plane going through the atmosphere. But without that, it won't fly because the thrust, it comes over the wing and it produces lift, okay? But if it wasn't hard going through it, the plane would never fly. So the very obstacle is the very key to success. But a lot of people don't see it that way. Think of the different inventions that have come because somebody had to overcome an obstacle.
Solving problems.
Problem solving is one of the greatest attributes of a leader. And so can you put an employee in a situation where you as boss knows what needs to be done, but you teach them to problem solve? Hey, I'm facing this. What would you do? Because you're constantly coaching them and teaching them to problem solve. And okay, what do you have to solve this problem? Okay, like the Apollo 13. They only had certain things in there, and they had to problem solve in order to get them back home after that malfunction. And so can you do that in a safe place to where he can learn to problem solve, and then he takes more risk because he's learned the art of problem solving. And he builds confidence, and he becomes a leader.
I love the movies. I mean, you had like Meet the Robinsons. You had Joy a couple years ago, that woman inventor. You see it over and over, these overcoming stories. And I think, isn't that great? I mean, I think we need more of those,
Absolutely.
But not only, I think sometimes we highlight inventions as being how great it is, but overcoming or problem solving on a local level, on a business level, on a employee level, on a skill level is also just equally as great. You know, I mean, solving a problem is solving a problem. And the more, I always say this, the more problems that you can solve, the more money that you'll make.
Absolutely. Because people will hire a problem solver because I just need somebody to get it done, okay, versus someone who's going to analyze it and sit there and complain about why they have the problem. While somebody else is doing it, they're going to be the one to get hired, okay? And so one of the keys I've learned is in the moment, you have to be able to solve the problem, and then afterward, when emotions are low and when you've already got through it, go back and coach, why didn't we catch the problem? Okay, because anybody can, okay, hey, we got a problem, let's learn from it. But can you prevent problems? Because if you would have recognized it earlier, or is this something that no matter what we would have done, we would have never recognized this? And okay, great, we learned from it. So next time this happens, we're prepared. But if you can learn to recognize them and solve them at the lowest level possible, it's much less costly than solving a big problem that has been ignored or not caught early enough and has now become a forest fire.
You know, my uncle taught me, one of the things that's always stuck with me is the 80-20 rule, and he says,
the Pareto principle.
You'll learn 80% of this business the first year, but it'll take you 20 years to learn the other 20% because they're anomalies. They're, it snowed in Orlando. It doesn't snow in Orlando. Actually, if you remember a couple years ago, it snowed in Atlanta and totally shut down the whole city for like 4 days. Nobody went anywhere. It was an anomaly because they weren't used to the snow. And you can say, well, it was the governor or mayor. They weren't prepared, right? But it hasn't happened again. And it's been 5-6 years, So you're going to run into that in business, what happens if there's an earthquake, but you're... you've never had
the 2008 housing market bust,
housing market, right.
Everybody was riding the pony.
You're going to be in business for 100 years and you have one downfall, right? So
life cycle of organizations, everything is cyclical, okay? There's a time where it breaks, it builds back up, it breaks, it builds back up. Even stocks teach us that. They go up, they go down, they build back up, they split, they do this, they do that. Everything's cyclical. You just got to be prepared.
Yeah, somebody was asking me the other day, and they're like, is it always this easy? And I was like, no. And, but go ahead and ride the easy wave, there's no sense in trying to totally change your business for recession when you're riding the easy wave. Be mindful, and I always encourage everybody to at least take out some percentage of money, put it towards saving, put it towards investing, put it toward paying things off so that you don't have that oh crap moment, with your finances.
Yeah.
The biggest reason people, stop business or don't start business is because they run out of money. That's the number one killer. You can blame it on your daughter for not doing your taxes. You can do it on this, you can do it on that. But really the problem is you're out of money now, know. So I always encourage people to take a little off the top in the good times. But here's the thing is it's hard to make your business wrapped around the 20% of ideas that possibly could happen when you need to solve the 80%. Do you know what the average is? Do you know what the day-to-day is? Do you know, how your business will look after a year, 2 years if you stay on this course of having, you're doing installations for Home Advisor, or you're doing installations for a contractor, or you've got these contracts, if you hook your wagon to, I did it with Steinmart. Steinmart, I was, hooked my wagon to them. I was doing all of their remodels, and the guy came to me and he said, I just got my budget cut in half from $5 million to $2.5 million. And I was like, well, that sucks. But it didn't connect to me. Oh, crap.
Your budget was just cut.
Just went down. Right. And so I was sitting there, and the next year I was like, so this is the result. But I hooked my wagon to him, and I was a little lazy. I got comfortable with the money. So sometimes we can see the problems coming, but if we don't recognize that this will be a potential problem and play out the scenario, I always tell people you have to almost be three parts of a business. You have to have the first part to be the forward thinker, the middle part to be the manager, and the last part to wrap up the end of the job, make sure the finances are there. What do we need to learn? What do we need to do? Do we need to store stuff, bring stuff out, roll this out to the beginning of the company? But to me, I think you break up three parts of the business, and as a boss and a leader, you have to look at all three parts. And maybe you can have a management team for the middle, or employees, doing the middle, day-to-day work of, mowing yards or stuff. And then, maybe at the end you have the accountings, or bookkeepers or CPAs or at the beginning part you have the salespeople but you definitely have to view your business in all three parts.
Correct. I agree completely with that. And, any good leader has to build a good team. He's only as good as his team, okay? And so in that, like you were talking about having a management team, okay, who's the stewardship, if we can use that word? All right, how much tile do we have left over? How much grout? How much thin set? How are our trials and all the different things that we use? Do we need new this? Do we need that? Because that could be what Walmart would call shrink. Okay, is your loss in your business just from expenses of different things? You could be, having a 10% shrink thing just because you don't have somebody accounting for your resources. Well, that person who's going out and bidding jobs doesn't need to be the one taking count how much tile is left over. It's going to kill him. Okay?
But he needs to know.
But
because
he needs to know. So there has to be a communication between the two. Right. And then the one doing the job needs to know, okay, we have this left over. I don't need to order this much. Okay. So the communication is critical in regard to the team. But if you have one person doing all three of those, you're going to kill them because they can't switch hats that quick.
Right.
Okay. So building that team is great. But going back to something you said about latching on to the big fish. When I worked at Walmart, I saw this often. That a vendor would get a Walmart account and they would think they just arrived at Disneyland, okay? Is that, you're in all the Walmart stores now, you're going to do this. And so Walmart got them in at an introductory price for their product, guaranteed a certain amount of stores. And so they see the bottom line and they're like, oh my gosh, I made it. So they get rid of all their mom and dad small store accounts because they're holding on to that big fish. Well, what Walmart does is as their prices change and as they're guarding their bottom line, they're going to come back to you and say, well, I need you to do it for this much now. And if you don't agree to that, you're out. And if you lost all of your mom and dad accounts because you're holding on that big fish, now you just lost your big fish. So I think you have to be diversified in even your jobs. Yeah, take it and appreciate when you get a big fish to latch on, like a Steinmart or a Kohl's or something like that, and you're doing all those, or like a Gander Mountain before they went bankrupt. Look at all those different things, but don't get rid of your other diversified projects because one of those will end, and you got to have the rest to carry it.
Yeah, that was definitely something that I've learned over the years because I did JCPenney's and man, we were killing it, doing the JCPenney's and Belk's, those two were kind of mixed in and then those two kind of faded out and then Kohl's came in and Kohl's was hitting 50 stores a year, see there was plenty of work, plenty of money, and then the recession came and then there was nothing. No retail stores was doing anything. And retail stores flip their flooring every 7 years. So again, you're like, Kohl's has 1,400 stores. If every 7 years they're flipping out their carpet and their flooring, and that means ongoing work, And so you get all bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. But in the recession, they're like, those 7-year stores became 10-year stores, and then they started doing, like you said before, used new products. They went from carpet to LVT. Well, LVT wears a whole lot better than carpet. Even Walmart's gone to stained concrete and stuff like that. Stained concrete wears a whole lot better than a tile, or So the industry's changed. I actually talked to a guy the other day who. His bread and butter is apartment buildings, and he does all the carpet in the apartment buildings. But now all the apartments are going to the LVT, and so now they don't need as much carpet. And so what he's seeing is his ticket sales are going down and down and down. But he's kind of at the end of this game. He's 60, 65 years old. He's trying to get out. He's like, I'm going to just hang on for a couple of years, ride this industry and then, retire instead of change. But I think for starting a business, you need to be flexible, through the knowledge and things that you're learning, and be responsible, and then even solve your own problems. Is this business sustainable for the next 10 years? Is this contract sustainable for the next 10 years, 20 years? I'm looking at stuff right now. We're doing some assisted living retirement homes. And my fear is, and I'm forward thinking this, nobody has said this, I'm forward thinking. My fear is that the stock market is going to say, oh crap, look at this company that has all of these residences. And they're going to throw a hunk of money at this company and say, we want to buy all of your stuff, which then means new management, new ownership, new direction, and so where would my company be? I mean, like, I hooked my wagon again to this company. But now, because of all the things that have happened in the past, I am saying I need to have something else, little something here or there, at least, or money or so.
Well, there's a proverb that says, when your riches increase, don't set your heart on them. Okay. What is the wisdom in that? Be thankful for it, but don't plan your life according to that, because it is going to change. Okay. And so, like you're talking about hitching your wagon. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to ride that pony for a while, but I'm not setting my entire business on it. I'm not setting my life on it where I depend on it. And then I begin to live at that standard of having it. You don't change your standard of operating business just because you catch a big fish. Yeah. I was talking to a steel business owner a while back. And during 2008, I mean, he was having a hard time meeting payroll. Okay. Well, this last year, he had his best year ever in the history of his business. And we were talking about that very principle. What did you learn in 2008? Okay, I learned here's where my operating expenses have to be. And he says, so in a good year, I don't change my operating expenses. In my bad year, I now have saved up and I can pay my payroll. He said, I learned not to set my heart on having it at this level, because that level will always change. Because, Trump could, or any president could pass a tariff to tax steel. Well, what did that just do to my cost? Right. I still have to honor the contracts I signed still at that other level, even though now I'm paying at the new level, because I hadn't done that job yet. But that was the contract we signed. And so when your riches increase, don't set your heart on them. Use it, learn it, enjoy it, put it away. But don't change your bottom line and don't change your operating expenses just because you get a good job.
Hooking your wagon, I think a lot of people, we love this idea of minority group, and then where do you get the most favor of being a minority group is with the government. And then everybody's like, well, I'm gonna get government jobs. But you don't realize when you go from being an employee straight to the biggest wagon of a government group, there is so much of a learning curve. There's so much responsibility that takes to get tape. Right, the red tape. And I mean, I remember, like, I had to have 7 folders created for each product that we're bringing on site with the leads, and it was a huge amount of paperwork, and that's what I had to realize. Like, my establishment of business, is it geared toward such a thing as Walmart? Is it geared towards such a thing as government? Is it geared toward, such a thing as like I'm doing now? Or am I more flexible or better at doing smaller stuff?
So your no is just as important as your yes in business.
That's a good point.
Because if you know this is not my market and I don't have the tools, I don't have the resources, I don't have the manpower to be able to do this. Now, ultimately, I'd like to get to that point. That's great. But to be able to say, no, I'm not there yet is wisdom. But also to be able to not buy the lie that this is somehow greener over here, because you didn't know about all the red tape. You didn't know about all the government regulations and what your guys would have to do on those jobs that in a regular commercial job they wouldn't have to do. And so it caused you to have to go back to school, quote unquote, with what the government regulations are versus what commercial regulations are. And so, was it worth it? doing that government job, or did it cause more time, more headaches because of a government job? Did you learn to say no to those in order to say yes to what you were equipped to do? How did you handle that?
Well, it goes back to being knowledgeable, and we have to question ourselves on our knowledge. I have a scenario of two guys. I just consulted this last year. One guy's up to $500,000, and that's the first one. You'd be like, oh, my God, I can't believe he's up to $500,000. I have another one who just started his own business in September. We're in late October, so about a month. And he's got $1.2 million in contracts that he's going to finish in the next 3 months. Here's the difference. Not that one person's better than the other. But the one person who's doing $500,000, his previous years of employment had a management of $200,000 to $350,000. So his wheelhouse was $250,000 to $350,000. The second guy was working on projects that were $35 million. So his wheelhouse is large projects. So, when I say he has contracts and he's already working on, he's going to be finished with one in about a month for $600,000. When I say, 1.2 million, 4 million, that's not a huge number to him, because he's used to signing contracts, having people do all these things to create, the work to be done. So I think that's the thing we have to analyze is, yes, it's great to have the multi-million-dollar jobs, but is our wheelhouse 250, 300,000,
And it's just like, for some odd reason in America, everybody thinks that number one leader is what everybody should be. But there's just as much necessity for somebody who's not a number one, who's a great number two, to stay in their wheelhouse, because when they get into the number one position, they fail. Okay? Or if a number one is in a number two, he's not going to be there long, okay, because something's going to happen there. And so the Jethro principle, who can lead thousands versus who can lead hundreds versus who can lead 50s. Okay? All three leaders are needed. It's just a difference of gifting and experience and expertise to be able to handle something at a bigger level. And so one of the greatest things you can know is to find out in your employees, what is their levels? Well, how do you do that practically? You have to test them. And not that you're just, making them be a puppet, but you put them in situations and you say, all right, can this guy really lead these 5 guys? Or, okay, I'm going to put him over 50. Is he walking around stressed, barking orders at everybody and driving everybody crazy? Well, he might not have the grace to handle 50. Okay? Well, give him 10. Well, man, he did that one great. Okay, you found his level of leadership. You got to practically test your employees to know what's in them.
Right, I know. I think sometimes the goal of the increase overtakes the knowledge of where responsibly we can be. And then other thing is, what kind of problems are we going to endure in that, And if our goal is to solve problems, do we want to create more problems? Yeah. I mean, I say, I want to be clear-minded, clear-scheduled, clear, so that I can help other people solve problems. If I've got a crap load of financial problems myself or situations going on myself, how can I help other people solve problems if I'm overwhelmed with my own problems?
So you will transfer your stress into the new situations with other people.
And what company would want to hire you if you, oh, sorry, I was late. I was trying to solve this problem or this problem came up. Companies want the demand of your greatness, and that's kind of the last point that we talked about is being great, So if you have problems in your own company, you won't be able to achieve that greatness for somebody else. Yeah. And then why am I hiring you, giving these contracts to you? It's kind of like, hey, you're great to be working for Walmart and have these contracts, but Walmart now says, hey, I need you to go a little bit less.
Can you be flexible and do that? Well, Jim Collins in his book Good to Great, one of the examination of principles that he has in that book, one of the ones that stuck out to me the most is getting the right person in the right seat on the right bus in the right direction. But the key is getting the wrong person out of that seat and off that bus. And that's what good companies did as he examined them. And so the very thing that you said is if a business is wanting and demanding best in our excellence, then you got to have the right people in the right place. If you have that wrong manager who can't handle 50, but he can only handle 10 as your job leader and representing you to that company, he's going to shoot you in the foot. Okay. And it's not going to work, and that company's not going to want to hire you again. So having the right team in place is absolutely critical. But knowing what seat is that person supposed to be on, and what direction is that bus going in, and is it going in the right direction? But then, man, is the wrong person out of that seat? Because you could have somebody that's been there a long time and they love doing this, but they're the wrong person for where you want to go. So how do you transition them out in order to get the right person in the right seat? Being able to navigate those changes, to me, is one of the greatest critical factors to be great. Is that, do I have the right people in my team in the right spots? Because if I don't, I'll never achieve greatness.
Well, it's funny because you talked about the guy hiring his daughter. I hired my wife. You kind of, when you start business, you're looking for, warm bodies and, stuff like that.
You don't have the luxury of it. Correct?
Right. And so I hired my wife, and it didn't last long because, she'd be like, why are you yelling at me? And I'm like, I'm not yelling. I'm just needing this done. Well, we get it done. And I hired my sister, and then, and so that's what I'm saying. Sometimes we aren't correctly being knowledgeable about what we're entering into with siblings. We're trying to be nice and stuff like that. But do you want a great business? Do you want to be great yourself? Then hire greatness, And if you're going to hire a sibling, do you have enough money to pay for them to do that situation? Because I kind of look at it from a supply and demand point of view. Sure. Do I have the supply of the demand to hire this person? If I don't,
if you don't hire him.
I hired a guy. I've made so many mistakes. I'm
on the right both.
Book of mistakes.
Yeah. Be the wisest book we ever read.
But I hired this guy, and he was an estimator, and I had him for a year, and I was paying him $50,000 a year to estimate jobs. And we didn't get it. 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 And then the job that we came in was like, 2,000, 4,000, or, and he's like, oh, we need to do this. We need to buy supplies, and we need to, so I spent another $20,000 bringing material in to cash and carry. It's like, oh, we need to cash and carry. And I realized his desire was more to be a salesperson and be cash and carry than an estimator, and analyze and break down and budget, because he would overanalyze, which then would raise the price up and then would outmarket us and I was like, so there was a great frustration because for me, I wanted to do commercial jobs and he wanted to do local jobs, and he wanted to talk to people, be relationship. And I'm like, I want to send the guys out and do work and work and work. And so I lost more than $50,000 that year because I paid him $50,000, but all the potential work that I lost. And I was bringing in work because of my relationships and the company was maintaining. So I had to fire him. I said, man, this ain't working. And that was a huge lesson for me, because it made me go back and analyze, did I hire the right person? Mm-hmm. Did I achieve communication correctly and all of those things? 50,000 is a big lesson.
So what can you learn in your interview process and in a trial period of working to not have to make a $50,000 mistake?
Well, I think the first thing to learn is it absolutely necessary? Mm-hmm. Right now I run a $4 million business with me and my secretary, so I would listen to and go to conferences and stuff like that, and they'd be like, get other people to do the work for you so you don't have to do the work. And I'm like, yeah, I need employees to do the work for me, and that's what I say is the danger of knowledge of a podcast, because sometimes, or a book, you read it, but at the core, is that information exactly, precisely recipe for your company?
Is it applicable to you? Correct.
Right. So, I'm sitting there saying, oh, to get more freedom, I need to hire this guy to do the hourly work that I don't want to achieve. And so I think that's kind of the first thing is, do you really need that position filled? I tell people be very, very, very weary of hiring somebody because it's a not week or month, it's not even seasonal. It's a 20 to 30 year commitment. Like if you can justify that you absolutely cannot do this for the next 20 years or 30 years in your business, you have to have this position filled.
Correct.
Then enter cautiously.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes into knowledge. Again, I get people all the time and they're asking me, they're saying, I'm going to buy this tractor. And if I buy this tractor, it will bring in the work because now I've got the tractor. And I said, you're backwards. Bring in the work and make the work demand that you buy the tractor.
Good call.
So it's kind of the same way with, hiring people or positions or employees. Have the work demand because everybody's utterly overwhelmed that you have to, because people are ready to quit because they're overworked and say, we need more people.
Correct. Not just staying around. So one of the things in the hiring process I want to point out is, number one, I've learned that when I begin to feel, man, I really wish I had this person to be able to do this job. Okay. So I analyze it. I make a job description for that role, and I judge, would the workload here necessitate the hire? So does the workload demand, just like what you talked about? But then I'll go to some key people that I trust on the team and say, hey, I see this. Am I seeing this accurately? And they adjust it. And I got to be willing to let them adjust it because my view is not always 100% accurate every time. And so they'll say, yes, I see this, but man, I don't really think it's going to be a 40-hour-a-week job. I think this could be done in 20 hours. All right, do we hire them part-time? And so you work all that out before you ever have an interview. The worst thing you can do is have an interview and then not be able to tell them what their job is and an accurate picture of that job. So then after we do that and we go through the interview process, I will let some of the other team members meet with that interview person without me there. And then once they meet with them, they'll come back and tell me, here's what I saw, here's what I like, here's what I didn't like, here's what I'm concerned about, so that I can be prepared when I go into that interview with them. And then if that confirms it to me, I'm like, okay, this person is not the fit for this job. They have a different heart than what we thought, or they have a different passion than what we thought. But being able to screen them effectively and ask the right questions is absolutely critical to the right hire. But if you don't even know what you want and you're just feeling pressure because you're overworked, then you're going to react and make a bad hire and lose another $50,000.
I love the word punt. Punt it, regroup, look at the situation a little differently, because what if you waited 2 months? Mm-hmm. The company might not have those same situations or problems. Was it seasonal? Was it Christmas time? Was it summertime? And everybody was gone because everybody's trying to go on vacation. And you're like, oh, I'm overworked or I can't get all this stuff done. So then you hire, at the end of summer in September, and then you come into Christmas time and basically nobody's hiring your situation. Right. Or like lawn care, are you hiring at the end of summer to help out with the lawn care jobs, and then all of a sudden you go into the winter?
Well, look at FedEx. I think they have that art down perfect. They know the busy season in the fall, so they hire all their seasonal workers, and then they lay them all off. The only ones that get kept on and hired full-time are the ones who surpassed expectation, who they saw potential in, and then they bring them in to do something that they already were prepared to have somebody do. Okay? And so, they let go of thousands after the season gets crazy. So they navigate their season correctly, but in that they're looking for potential from that whole pool of seasonal workers, and then they pick the best of the best from that seasonal group and put them in their organization. It's a win-win.
Well, and it's kind of being knowledgeable because, you know, like it's kind of like the tide comes in, but the tide doesn't come in with one wave. You know, it comes in, it goes out, it comes in, it goes out. And so what FedEx is doing is they know that they overall company increases 4, 5, 6, whatever percent a year. So they know with that increase that they're going to have to also increase the staffing. You know, and so that's a great point is how do you solve the problem of the 4% increase every year? You know, you have a big increase for Christmas, so you hire the personnel, you let the tide go out with all the extra employees, and then you keep that 4% for the overall growth for the year.
Absolutely.
So that's really a brilliant thing. And it comes back to knowing and then being responsible for your knowing and then solving the problem of it to make you be great.
And so they screen those people at the very beginning to even give them a seasonal job. So they know there's a little bit of a standard there. But then as they've worked them for 3 months, they've been watching, they've been evaluating, and then they pick those who make it. Why don't we do the same thing?
Right.
Okay, that's what a great 90-day trial period is okay, I'm going to give you these jobs and I'm going to see how you handle it. You know, and I'm going to have other people watching you. Do you fit with the team? Can you get the job done with excellence? Can you get it done on time? You know, or, you know, do you divide the team? Are you grumpy all the time when you walk in and, you know, everybody hates being around you? That's a big sign. So have that evaluation period to make sure that your standard is being met. That's how you be great.
Well, you know, the other thing about being great is the flexibility of change. So we hired somebody on and we talk about this is what we want to do. And we start going down that course and we're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot, you know. And then it's like, why are we doing all of this? Is it a need? Because sometimes we think we need it, but we don't. You know, we get back to the tractor. You know, we think we need the tractor, but you don't have any job, so you don't really need the tractor. You know, and I've considered it, and this is one of the ways that I learned because I was like, man, the industry is changing, and everybody's going to concrete, and then everybody's talking about how much money people are making in concrete. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to switch my company from tile to concrete. And, you know, I'm start looking at it, and it's $150,000 to get into it, and it's right around the recession, and I'm already, you know, trying to bail out other loans and different things, and oh, man. And then I realized, am I going after a bigger whale than my boat can handle? I don't even have the skills or the knowledge or the expertise in that. And a guy told me one time, he said, I tell you what to do. Test yourself. He said, get the job, hire somebody else to do the job, learn from them as they do the job, and you sub it out, and you make a little money on it. And I thought to myself, different business plan. Like you were talking about the fist, you know, what angles am I looking at, how to accomplish to do burnished concrete, stained concrete, all this stuff. And I think we put a larger demand on ourselves as the boss, and maybe it's just a carrot stick, you know, and we put our own carrot stick in front of us, you know, and it's like we're chasing a dream that we feel maybe to be great, we need to achieve this. But I think greatness comes into the management of whatever you have, you know, to whatever level it is. I mean, I was happy when I was making $150,000. I was happy when I made $300,000. And honestly, there was a little bit of a carrot stick for me to get up to $1 million. But now at around $4 million, I don't have a carrot stick on me to go to 5 or 10 million because I'm like, I'm happy. you know, like I'm in my wheelhouse.
You'll pay a price to go there.
I don't need $20 million. You know, like we're paying things off. We got buildings, we got real estate, we got stocks, we got our investments, you know, and so like me, I'm building other things. You know, it affords me the ability to start other companies and stuff. And so I'm looking to put my time into that rather than build out my company to $20 million.
Well, even last time we talked, we referenced Chick-fil-A and just some of the excellence of their organization, okay? And so I've come to believe that in our culture, anybody can blow up and do one thing great one time. But to repeatedly put out a product to complete a job with excellence in the mundane routine of offering that job consistently, I think that is greatness. Because to get somebody to be faithful day in and day out, to get somebody to do excellent work day in, day out, is one of the greatest attributes you can find in a society that doesn't value that anymore.
The instantaneous.
They want it now. They want it yesterday, actually. And very few people care about offering a regular product consistently over time. And, with that faithfulness that they're going to be there, they're going to do their job, they're going to follow it through. Okay. And most of the people just want to blow up, do one job, and man, they want to get the big fish on the first time. Okay. Nobody wants to learn the art of constantly over and over and over, offering a good product all the time and to be faithful in that. And I think it's great for somebody to be able to say, listen, I'm going to do this job. I'm going to do it well. You hire them again a year later and they have the same level. And you hire them a year after that and they have the same level. To be able to do that is great in our society.
Yeah, I think, I remember Gerald telling me one time, don't despise small beginnings. And small beginnings are scalable, so like we're talking about side hustle or starting your business or, is your business lawn care? Yes. Okay. Can you be great, and do your lawn care when you're not working your 40-hour work week? Yes. Well, can you scale that up? Yes. Can you get more people to help you do that? Yes. And so if you almost concentrate on the small, you can make the small repeatable to where it becomes bigger and bigger. And I think we lose the focus on that. We go straight to the big, we spend too much money. We buy the tractor. We go for the government job. We go for Walmart job. And the problem that from nothing to multi-millions is it's too many problems in such a short time. Mm-hmm. Let's set yourself up for greatness. Go small.
Well, see, one of the problems our society faces, and this happens with every generation, is a new generation comes and wants to live at the level that the previous generation took 30 years to work for. And they want it now.
Talk about it.
So like with my parents, I wanted to live at the level that they were at after 30 years of working for it. Right. Okay. It's impossible to do that because you don't have the characters to sustain it. You don't have the skills, the knowledge. You don't have the ethic to sustain that. And so that they want to go out and get in debt for 7 years with a brand new car and drive off the lot and lose $15,000 the minute they turn on that road and take it off the lot. Whereas my parents drove the same car for 10 years and saved up and bought it with cash. That instantaneous society is not willing to allow the process to hone them, shape them, and change that. And so every generation bucks because they don't want to go through the process. And the same in business. Okay, as you get a new generation coming up, and yes, there's things that they have that the old generation doesn't have. Okay, and their abilities, and you got to learn to hone those two, but you also got to learn to merge in the character and the ethic that this isn't going to be built overnight. The reason we're here is because we've taken the last 30 years and handled this correctly, and you're not going to be able to deal with that in a year at your level. Does that make sense to you?
100%. Yeah, I mean, again, back to all the mistakes I've made in life. I've done that. I bought a brand new truck and a brand new car at the same time, and I think my payments were close to $1,350 a month, for those two vehicles. And I was like, ooh, the desire of having that is there. I, from that point, always drove used cars. After that, I'm like, I don't need the $70,000 truck. I'm just going, from here to here, and I want clean. I want, reliable. I want all these things, but it doesn't translate into, it has to be brand new. I actually, when I bought it, I was telling my friend, I was like, well, it'll never break down. I was like, I'm buying a new truck. It won't break down. 2 years it broke down. And it didn't just break down. I mean, it made a huge hole in my floorboard. My gearbox chain came on. And, I mean, it was like the sparks of hell were coming up on me as I was driving on 75, have a load in the back. And it's so interesting that I was like, brand new truck, never break down. And it broke down, And so that's why I say knowledge, maybe our understanding isn't always the correct,
It's not an accurate assessment.
Right.
Correct.
And so being flexible, asking people, asking other businessmen. That's why we're doing this podcast, is so that other people who started companies can come on and say what they achieved, how they achieved it, what goals they had, how they changed their goals, how they grew their business through employees, what kind of was the step. I mean, Josh, one of the great ones, he was working at Kinderloo, started his own company, worked his own company, now has multiple employees going out, doing bigger and bigger contracts. I actually said something to him the other day. I said, hey, it was a commercial job. I said, hey, they need some brick pavers. And he's like, that's too small of a job for me. And I was like, good job. Good job that you're at the point where you're like, that's too small,
Or once again, he can say no,
right,
instead of just saying yes all the time.
He's like, my payroll demands that I gotta do bigger, more profit or stuff like that. And I was like, how awesome, because it was basically 2004. I mean, basically about 15 years ago. He started on this course. But he started himself, a truck, a lawnmower, now he just bought a building, and he's got, I was talking to his dad, and he's like, man, I'm so proud of my son because he's always buying equipment with the profit. Well, what is one of the reasons why? Because he's with Eric, and Eric's always buying equipment and talking about business and stuff like that. So, I mean, the relationships around you will help you grow your business. I've even had, where I get a contract from a superintendent or a company or a project manager, and they coach me in what they like and what they need and stuff like that, how I can be a better subcontractor to them, or in general, how do I write a contract? How do I do a lien? I've had I call up one superintendent and I say, hey, I'm having another problem on this job. This guy's not paying me money. What do I do? He's like, put a lien. And he's like, this is what and he walks me through it. And, but if I were to call him up and say, hey, you're not paying me and I'm going to put a lien, a different element, but he's knowledgeable about the industry and help me out. And that's what you talked about before. If you can find a boss and humble yourself and learn the skill from your boss, do it, but do it to everybody for the rest of your life.
Correct. It's a mentality of being teachable and learning in every situation. I can learn as much from my enemies as I can my friends. Okay, I can learn much from people who failed as those who've succeeded. Learning is an attitude, and it's a humility that you take to be able to admit you don't know everything and that you need to learn from somebody else. It's critical to advancing. I
was talking to somebody the other day who says, your mind is interesting because you can take 3 or 4 different points of view at the same time and not disrupt that those points aren't valuable. Like you can maintain that these are good and important points and then still bring in your point of view and kind of group them all together, where you can find a truth through all of it. And I said, the reason is because it happened with my marriage is, I would tell my wife what I thought was important, and I was like, this is the most important information, woman, because I'm saying it. And the thought came to me one day, what if she believes this is the most important information because I'm saying it back to me? And it gave me that aha of, we all think we have important information. But that thought is not a bad thought as long as it can be attached to, I think I have important information to tell you, but I think you have important information to tell me. Correct. And then we can receive that information together and grow. Because now, basically, we took your idea, my idea, boom, how much bigger are we together?
And that brings up another point. I'm just going to repeat what you said, but a different way. The art of listening is critical to learning. Because if you're always talking, thinking you have the most important ideas, you're never going to learn from anybody else. So to be quiet and listen and know what conversations to listen to is an art form, but it's critical to your growth. And so anybody that, Proverbs says that in the multitude of words, there's confusion. Okay, there's problems, there's sin that lies in a multitude of words. And so if you can learn to be quiet and listen, you'll learn to navigate things that other people would miss.
It's good. Well, listen, you're an employee. We want you to be a boss. We want you to start that side hustle. We want you to become that leader. We want you to have that confidence. And since it's going to come through knowledge, which is going to come through experience, it's going to take you being responsibility for you and the company. It's going to take you solving problems, and it's also going to let you be great. You're going to be great in your industry. Put a demand on yourself and everybody around you to always do the best, always do more than what you're asked for, and show people that you can do those great things for them so that you can take away that pressure to make them successful. Until next time.